Heartwarming truth revealed. Black Nanny discovers shocking secret behind billionaire heiress's tormented family. Grace woke up to the familiar scent of pancakes wafting through their small apartment. The morning sun peeked through the dusty window, illuminating their modest kitchen. This was her world, a world far from the affluence of the Thompsons, where she worked as a nanny. At 35, Grace was both a caretaker and a single mother to a vibrant 10-year-old, Marcus, whose laughter echoed down the hallway. Today felt different as she poured syrup over a stack of fluffy pancakes, each drop a reminder of the struggles they face, bills piling up and dreams deferred. As she wiped Marcus' face, she saw a spark in his eyes. "Mom, can we paint today?" he asked. The joy of creativity lit his face, but the thought of supplies they couldn't afford dimmed hers. "Let us see what we can do, baby." Instilling hard work and integrity in him was her ultimate battle, a fight against the all-too-visible divide that riddled their quaint community of Maple Grove. Once at the Thompson residence, a grand mansion that shimmered like a jewel, Grace felt that familiar knot in her chest bloom into determination. It was her duty to look after Lily, a sweet girl with a wild imagination and dreams of becoming an artist. Their connection grew, a bond that danced around the boundaries of their differing worlds. They crafted paper butterflies together, creating a realm where money didn't define worth, just joy and understanding. But with each playful moment, Grace's financial worries crept closer, reminding her of the reality awaiting her after the workday ended. One afternoon, as Grace rearranged Lily's colorful chaos of toys, her fingers brushed against something hard. A journal, well-worn and hidden beneath a stack of crayons. With curiosity simmering, she opened it to a world of fears masked by wealth. The pages unraveled stories of debts, lies, and greed, secrets that whirled around the Thompson family like shadows. Grace's heart raced. What had she just uncovered? Before she could process the news, Maple Grove was rocked by rumors of dishonest business practices threatening local jobs. Tension simmered just beneath the surface as families united in solidarity against the looming injustice. Grace realized then that this was more than just the Thompson struggle. It was a community matter, a problem that could break the hearts of people she loved. She felt a sense of urgency, a pull to act not just for her son, but for others who faced the same fears. At the town hall meeting, the air was thick with determination and anxiety. Grace could feel the eyes on her, the weight of their expectations pressing down like a heavy fog. "Speak," a voice cried out, urging her to unveil the truth she held. Her heart raced, and time seemed to slow as she stood. All around her, faces flickered with uncertainty, and the whispers danced, a nervous energy building. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." With a deep breath, Grace stepped forward, her pulse racing. This was her moment to break the silence, a moment to stand up not just for herself, but for Marcus, for every person grappling with the same fears. Would her words bring change or shatter the fragile world she had built? As doubt flooded her mind, she squared her shoulders, ready to unleash the storm of truth hovering just beneath the surface. She was not just a nanny, not just a mother, she was a voice that mattered. A raw, stirring wave of hope washed over her. What would she choose? The answer loomed, shimmering with uncertainty and possibility. With the microphone cradled in her shaking hands, Grace felt the world around her fade. The murmurs in the crowd melted into a low hum, and her heart thumped loudly in her chest. She could see the faces, friends, neighbors, those who shared her struggles, each one watching her earnestly. Good evening, she began, her voice trembling slightly before it steadied. I'm Grace, and I've been a part of this community for years. The truth of her words resonated deeply within her. She didn't just care for Lily Thompson. She cared for all of them, for their dreams, their livelihoods hanging in balance. The crowd leaned in closer, their eyes alive with expectation as she took a deep breath. I found something that you need to know. The words felt heavy as they rolled off her tongue. It's about the Thompsons. Gasps rippled through the assembly, heads turning in whispers of apprehension. Grace's mind raced back to the journal, those haunting pages filled with secrets. Would her revelation shatter the facade they all lived behind? There are things happening that threaten our jobs and our homes. The Thompsons aren't just wealthy. They are caught in a web of lies and deception. The air crackled with tension as she continued. They have debts that run deep, and they've been hiding it all from us, from their own family. I believe that these decisions will hurt our entire community. The truth erupted from her lips, igniting an awareness that felt both liberating and terrifying. As she looked around, she saw stunned faces. Her words had landed, creating a ripple of disbelief, anger, and fear. Yet amidst the chaos of emotions, she noticed Lily's father standing frozen near the back of the room. His expression was a mix of shock and betrayal, and it made her heart clench. Grace didn't want to hurt anyone, but she knew the truth had a power of its own. Cautiously, she continued, This isn't just about the Thompsons. It's about all of us. We need to stand together to ensure our community remains intact. Families are already feeling the effects, and if they hide this from us, what else are they capable of? Her voice grew stronger, fueled by a collective energy that seemed to elevate her. Together, we can demand accountability. A murmur of agreement surged through the crowd, and Grace felt a spark of hope light within her. Yet, just as she began to sense a shift, a somber voice cut through the urgency in the air. It was Mrs. Thompson, her eyes filled with hurt and disbelief as she took a step forward. Grace, you don't understand. There are reasons. The weight of Mrs. Thompson's heartache froze Grace in place, memories of Lily's innocent laughter creeping back. Would revealing this truth drive a wedge between them forever? The thought stung like a knife. The moment stretched, and time slowed, leaving Grace grappling with conflicting loyalties. In that instant, she felt cornered. Was the truth worth the potential harm it could cause to innocent hearts? What price would honesty demand in the face of so many unspoken ties? As the two women locked eyes, both sides of the emotional divide surged within Grace. Would she fight for the community or protect the family that had become part of her life? The question hung heavy in the air, and she fought for clarity amidst the storm of her thoughts. Could there be a way to bridge both worlds? The town hall echoed with uncertainty, a quiet undercurrent pulsating in the charged atmosphere. Something had to shift. Would she be strong enough to face the consequences of her decisions? A million possibilities swirled around them, each one whispering of hope and heartache. And as the weight of it all settled heavily on her shoulders, a realization dawned. The next move was hers alone. What would it mean for them all? Would the truth become a lifeline, or would it sever their fragile connections for good? The future of Maple Grove hung in the balance, and Grace felt her pulse quicken once again, knowing that whatever she chose, nothing would ever be the same. What path would she take now? Where? Every step could lead to salvation or ruin. The air thickened with anticipation, and one final truth was about to unfold. Grace swallowed hard, the lump in her throat preventing her from speaking for a moment longer. She felt as if she was teetering on the edge of a steep cliff, the ground beneath her shifting and uncertain. The assembly was now a sea of anxious faces, some furious, some confused, others simply hurt. And then Mrs. Thompson opened her mouth to speak again. Grace, she began, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. You don't know the whole story. We We never meant to hide anything from you. We thought we were protecting the community." The pity in her voice cut deeper than any accusation could. Protecting? The word echoed in Grace's mind. She wanted to retort, to scream that protecting the community meant being honest, but the empathetic tone in Mrs. Thompson's voice urged her to reconsider. There was a deeper complexity to what lay beneath the surface of their lives. With a shaky breath, Grace replied, "But at what cost? Ignorance is not protection. You risk losing everything we've built here together." A murmur swept through the crowd, amplifying the tension like a heavy fog. She saw people nodding, some clenching their fists in agreement, and others looking away in discomfort. It struck Grace then that the Thompsons were not just family. They were a piece of the town's history, too woven tightly into the fabric of Maple Grove. Then Lily broke through the gathered crowd, her small figure looking fragile among the towering adults. She gazed up at her mother, confusion and fear evident in her big brown eyes. "Mom? What is happening?" The sight of her daughter brought tears to Mrs. Thompson's eyes. "Lily, sweet pea. It's complicated." Complicated? That word felt like a wall between them. Grace could feel the emotions of the crowd morphing, disappointment turning into resentment, sympathy battling against betrayal. She took a step forward, heart racing, wanting to shield both Mrs. Thompson and Lily. "Maybe we can figure this out," Grace suggested, her voice rising slightly above the murmurs. "If we all talk, really talk, we could find a solution that benefits everyone. We can't let fear tear us apart." A pause fell over the crowd, a moment where hope and despair wrestled for dominance. Grace held her breath, waiting. Finally, a voice broke through the silence. It was Mr. Johnson, a long-standing member of the town council. "Grace is right. There's a chance for reconciliation if we can face these issues together." His tone was firm. As a voice of authority, he had the power to sway opinions. His support was crucial. The energy shifted. More voices chimed in, echoing sentiments of solidarity. Grace felt a spark igniting among them, each word pushing against the darkness that had settled. Yet she couldn't shake the nagging doubt. Would they truly come together, or merely put on a brave face? Mrs. Thompson turned back to Grace, the plea in her eyes matching the weight of Grace's heart. "We thought we could keep it from affecting you all, but maybe we have to face it together," she said, her voice shaking with resolve. Then as the tension began to dissolve, Grace felt the lingering fear in her gut. What if their attempt to understand led to deeper splits? A fragile truce might not be enough. And as the first glimmers of hope started piercing through the heaviness, she knew they were at a crossroads. With a deep breath, Grace made a choice. "Let's schedule a meeting. We can lay everything out on the table. Barriers down. No secrets." As whispers of agreement began to spread, a thought struck Grace. What if in their quest for truth, they uncovered something even darker lurking in the shadows? What if the Thompsons' problems were just the tip of the iceberg, hinting at an even more significant threat to their community? The air buzzed with possibility, not just for healing, but for potentially unearthing secrets that could change everything. What truths lay beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? Would they be ready for the revelations to come? The meeting was set for Friday evening, a tentative step towards confrontation that felt like walking a tightrope high above a churning sea. As Grace walked through her front door, emotion surged inside her, a mix of hope and dread. Would truth bring healing, or would it splinter their community apart even further? In the days leading up to the meeting, conversations buzzed around town. Grace overheard snippets at the cafe, whispers that traveled like wildfire. People were anxious. They wanted answers, but fear was a powerful barrier. Some feared the Thompsons would never be able to own up to their secrets, while others counted on Grace's courage to lead the community toward resolution. Grace's heart fluttered each time she returned to her bedroom. The very walls felt like they were pulsing with the weight of her worries. She pored over her notes, trying to articulate her thoughts, but the words danced just out of reach. With every pass over the paper, she felt the enormity of their situation. What if she failed them? What if her courage was not enough? On Thursday evening, Grace found herself at the Thompson household. She walked over, needing to feel the warmth of Lily's laughter and the comfort of Mrs. Thompson's presence. As they sat in the living room, awkward silence filled the space. Mrs. Thompson kept glancing at the clock, her fingers entwined nervously. "Do you think it'll help?" Mrs. Thompson finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Grace searched her face. "I hope so. But it's not just about us, is it? It's about everyone in this town. Their pain, their anger, we have to address it openly." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I'm scared, Grace. I can't bear to lose them, our neighbors, our friends. We've made mistakes, but they deserve to know the truth," Grace finished for her. "The truth can hurt, but hiding it only makes it worse." They sat in silence, the ticking clock marking the seconds until everything changed. Grace's resolve deepened. They were on the brink of something, swirling with possibilities. What would it take for the Thompsons to open up? The darkness had festered for so long in their collective hearts. Friday arrived, the day its own storm cloud of uncertainty hanging heavy over Maple Grove. Grace arrived early at the community center, her heart thumping wildly. She could feel the energy in the air, electric with anticipation. As people filtered in, she exchanged nods and hesitant smiles, uncertainty reflected in everyone's eyes. "Ready for this?" Mr. Johnson asked as he approached her. "As ready as I'll ever be," Grace replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The room filled slowly, tension palpable as chairs scraped against the floor. When Mrs. Thompson finally entered with Lily, the sight of them together, a broken family at the center of shattered closeness, brought an emotional stir to the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," Grace began. The weight of the moment settled on her shoulders, each word feeling monumental. "We're here because we want healing. We can't let fear dictate our relationships. We need honesty, and we need to share the truth." As she spoke, she watched the faces of the townspeople shift from apprehension to something deeper. What she didn't expect was for Mrs. Thompson to step forward, her shoulders squared as if shedding an invisible weight. "I'd held secrets that should not have been mine to keep," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice breaking the stillness. "I thought it was for the good of everyone, but I was wrong. Today, I want to share our truth with you." A sharp intake of breath echoed in the room, eyes widening in disbelief. What revelations would surface? What could possibly emerge from the depths of the Thompsons' past? As Mrs. Thompson began her story, a sense of dread mixed with palpable hope washed over Grace. But what lay hidden beneath the surface could change everything they thought they knew about each other. Would the truth be the glue that bound them together, or the hammer that shattered their community once and for all? Mrs. Thompson's words hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick with anticipation. The crowd leaned in, collective breaths held, as she gathered her thoughts. "I've carried this weight for too long. It's time to let it go," she declared, her voice wavering but resolute. "Lily, you don't even know the half of it." The room erupted in murmurings, voices tinged with suspicion and confusion. Grace's heart raced. She could see Lily's brow furrow, uncertainty shadowing her youthful features. But the girl's courage sparkled through the dimness as she stepped forward, casting a glance at her mother. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Lily asked, her voice calm but barely concealing the storm of emotion swirling beneath the surface. "I was afraid of how you'd react, how everyone would react," Mrs. Thompson continued, her hands trembling. "I lied to protect you. I thought it would shield you from pain, but really, I was just shielding myself." Gradually, the anxious hum of the crowd quieted, all eyes glued to the Thompsons. Grace felt a rush of empathy, a mother's instinct to protect her child, even if it meant building walls that eventually isolated them. "There's a truth about our family that very few know," Mrs. Thompson confessed. "Years ago, before you were born, Lily, there was an accident. It was terrible. I was involved in a car crash that changed everything. A life was lost because of my mistakes." The room gasped. Grace's mind raced, the pieces starting to fit in an unexpected puzzle. Lily's wide eyes told her everything. "You mean?" "I was never the same after that," Mrs. Thompson admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I've held on to that guilt, thinking if I just kept quiet, no one would blame me. But my silence burned a scar into this community just as deeply." Lily stepped forward, shocked yet compassionate. "Mom, it's okay. You didn't have to go through this alone." Around the room, people shifted uneasily. Grace could feel their collective heartbeat, a blend of empathy and outrage, mingling like an incoming tide. Some whispered reassurances, while others displayed disbelief. Secrets had a way of reshaping reality, turning longtime friends into strangers. "Is this why you've always kept me close?" Lily's voice trembled, her innocence tangling with the weight of her mother's confession. "Is this why we were never part of the community?" The weight of the question hung heavy. Grace watched the townspeople exchange glances. Among them were faces she recognized, all painted with expressions of shock and consideration. The truth had ignited stronger emotions than anyone anticipated: guilt, anger, sorrow, and beneath it all, the longing for connection. "We've all made mistakes," an elderly woman called out, her voice soft yet firm. "But if we never talk about them, they'll fester forever." "I didn't just drag our family into darkness," Mrs. Thompson lamented. "I tore apart relationships. I thought I was protecting my daughter, and in reality, I pushed everyone away." Grace felt a rush of compassion for both Mrs. Thompson and Lily. Their vulnerability stirred something deep within her. The moment felt critical. If they could all find a way to forgive, perhaps the town could rediscover its unity. But just as things seemed to be changing, a voice from the back emerged, rising above the murmurs. "And what about us, the ones who suffered? What do we get?" Grace's stomach knotted. The rawness of hurt was palpable. Would the town accept the truth? Would they understand that healing required everyone, the Thompsons, the townsfolk, and even her, to take a leap into the unknown? As the conversation swirled, Grace realized how fragile this moment truly was. They stood at the edge of revelation, the possibility of rebuilding their community within reach. But the lingering question remained: could they embrace the rawness of the truth to heal the wounds that had long been festering? The room held its breath, straddling the line between anger and understanding, yearning for connection yet terrified of betrayal. Would they step forward into the light together, or would the weight of their collective history pull them back into the shadows? Grace held her breath, ready for whatever would come next. Lily's eyes darted across the room, searching, pleading. "Mom," she started, her voice steady but soft, "if it's true that you felt trapped, why didn't you just tell me? I could have helped. We could have faced this together." Mrs. Thompson's shoulders drooped, and she closed her eyes, accepting the weight of her daughter's hurt. "I thought I was protecting you, Lily, but I only pushed you farther away." Her voice cracked slightly, revealing layers of guilt barely touched upon. Around them, the crowd shifted uneasily, then murmurs transformed into emotions. The elderly woman who had spoken earlier pressed on, a glimmer of compassion piercing her anger. "We're all facing the aftermath. Maybe you didn't just hurt your own family, but no one can heal alone, including us." The crowd, those simmering with tension, began to nod, finding a bit of common ground. Grace felt the air crackle with an unspoken agreement. People were hungry for connection, even if it meant digging up old wounds. "Then let us together try to fix this," a voice chimed in from the back, thick with vulnerability and yearning. It was James, a childhood friend of Lily, who had been caught in the crossfire of their history. We all suffered, but we can't begin to heal by pointing fingers. Mrs. Thompson looked up, her eyes shimmering with fresh tears. I didn't want my mistakes to define you, Lily. But they shouldn't define us as a community either. We can rise above if we're willing to talk. As the murmurs spread, a shift was palpable. Grace sensed walls beginning to crack, and hope flickered amidst the uncertainty like a candle in the dark. But then, an icy voice pierced the air. Talk? You think words can erase the pain? You think we're just supposed to forgive and forget? It was Mark, a man whose family had been deeply involved in the crash's fallout. The pain in his voice was raw, layered with memories of loss. Lily stepped back, her expression shifting from anger to sorrow. I understand you're hurt, Mark. But everyone here has felt the sting of this event in some way. I lost my mom as trust, and I needed her to be there for me. We all deserve a chance to heal. Mrs. Thompson interjected, her voice gaining strength. I was wrong to think silence could protect you. Silence only brings despair. We can't take back what happened, but we can choose to step forward. The crowd seemed to be holding a collective breath, caught between forgiveness and resentment. So what happens next? Someone whispered in the back, the question echoing the uncertainty swirling through the air. Grace's heart raced once more. A sense of urgency pressed on her chest. This could be it, she thought. This might be the moment they begin to truly understand each other. Mrs. Thompson glanced around the room, sensing the heavy anticipation. Let us meet. Let us share our stories, truly share them. Together, we can confront the ghosts that haunt us. Just then, a small voice from the front piped up little Molly, a girl no older than 8, eyes wide and innocent. But what if we don't want to talk? What if it hurts too much? The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Grace held her breath. It was a question that lingered longer than any other. Would they open up? Would they risk the pain to find healing? As the room dissolved into silence, the weight of choice sat on everyone's shoulders. In that moment of uncertainty, the future lay before them, veiled yet full of possibilities. Would they take the leap together, or would fear keep them imprisoned in their hurt? Lily's gaze locked with her mother's. They each clung to a thread of hope, but the tension crackled like electricity. Would this moment spark the change they so desperately needed, or would it fizzle into nothingness? The answer loomed, tantalizing and unattainable. The silence thickened, an invisible force wrapping around each person in the room. Grace could feel the heaviness of it, pulsing like a heartbeat. She held her breath, hoping that someone would break the stillness, hoping for a sign that this was just going to slip away. Then, with a trembling hand, Mrs. Thompson stepped forward. Molly, sweetheart, sometimes the pain is part of the healing. Her voice was soft but firm, like a mom comforting her child. It might hurt to talk, but it also brings us together. It reminds us we're not alone. Molly looked up at her mother with wide eyes, uncertainty dancing across her little face. But in that moment, something shifted in the crowd. A man in the back, his face shadowed by grief, stepped forward. I lost my brother that day, he said, his voice ragged yet filled with resolve. I've been angry for so long. Anger towards this family, anger towards life. But if we have a chance to talk, to share what we felt, then maybe it's time I start. With those words, others started to murmur their agreement. One by one, voices began to rise, fragile at first, like new sprouts pushing through hardened earth. I lost friends, someone else added. We all lost something, didn't we? Maybe we share the burden of that loss. Lily watched as faces around her softened, their expressions laden with stories untold. The air grew warm with the seeds of understanding. We can't pretend it didn't happen, Mark said, emotion flooding his voice. But we have to find a way to live with it. I'm tired. So tired of carrying this anger. Lily felt a swell of courage rise within her. Me too, Mark. She stepped closer, her heart drumming as she locked eyes with him. What if we shared what we loved about those we lost? What if we honored their memories instead of letting blame tear us apart? The silence broke like a wave crashing on the shore. Murmurs spread, growing louder, electrifying the atmosphere. Yes. Let us remember them. Let us honor the love we had. In that moment, a palpable connection formed, knitting together threads of shared grief and the hope for healing. Grace couldn't help but smile. The unity they longed for was beginning to take shape. It might be rough, but they were ready. But as they exchanged stories of love, of laughter, and of lives lost too soon, the impact of the moment suddenly crashed down. An elderly man rose slowly, his face pale and worn. I wish I could tell you my wife's name, but I don't remember it. The room shivered in collective disbelief. Gasps echoed as he wept softly, words slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. I was too angry. I didn't want to hold on to the past. But now Lily felt her heart lurch. Their personal struggles were tangled in a web woven of a shared tragedy. She didn't want to lose sight of their progress, but the depth of their pain swirled around her. Don't we deserve to find peace? She urged, looking at her mother, then at the crowd. Mrs. Thompson took a deep breath, her voice gentle but certain. Peace isn't easy. It requires us to be vulnerable. But it's worth fighting for. We deserve it. Every word hung heavy, filled with emotion. And in that unexpected softness, a flicker of hope ignited within Grace again. What if they could actually face their past? What if each person in the room shared something true, something real? But as the group readied themselves to dive deeper, the doors to the community hall swung open with a jarring crash. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, a stranger, a presence that felt out of place and electrifying. As everyone turned to stare, Lily's stomach twisted with a sudden, sharp question in her mind. Who was this new arrival, and what truth did they bring? The room buzzed with anticipation, each person clutching their vulnerabilities tightly, unaware of the storm headed their way. The stranger stepped into the room, and the atmosphere shifted like a tide pulling back from the shore. He hesitated at first, taking in the faces before him. Tension dripped from the walls, and whispers danced on the lips of the crowd like flickers of candlelight in a storm. "Who are you?" someone finally called out, shattering the stillness. The man adjusted his glasses, his frame tall and wiry, but his eyes, those eyes held depths of stories untold. "I'm sorry to intrude," he began, his voice steady though threading with an undercurrent of urgency. "My name is David. I lost my sister during the tragedy." His admission stung the room like a sudden chill, and Lily felt the weight of the shared bond tightening an invisible thread among them. Her heart raced as the words hung heavy, raw and real. She remembered the name Mary, whispered from her own lips many nights when the world had grown dark. She knew, then, there was something powerful about the connections they were weaving tonight. David stepped further into the room, a storm of emotions brewing in the depths of his voice. "I've spent years trying to bury my pain, trying to shield myself from memories. But in doing so, I lost the chance to remember her, to remember the joy she brought into this world." Lily could see tears pooling in his eyes, reflecting the collective heartache that filled the hall. "Your words about honoring those we lost, they resonate. We shouldn't forget them. They deserve that much." An electric hum swept through the crowd. Where there was silence before, now it felt as if every heartbeat synchronized, resounding a desire for release, for healing. "Tell us about her," Mark encouraged, stepping closer, encouraging David with his own vulnerability. "What was she like?" David inhaled deeply, fighting to find the words. "She was radiant, always smiling, even in the toughest times. Mary would brighten even the darkest days with her laughter." His smile, although bittersweet, sparked warmth in the room. She loved to dance, and every year on her birthday, she would throw an impromptu party. No one was ever left out. It didn't matter if you were a stranger or if you knew her forever. With each detail that flowed from David, he painted a vivid picture of a life well lived, winding trails of love and joy threading through the air. The faces around him softened in remembrance of their own loved ones. Tears began to trickle down Lily's cheeks as she thought of her own sister, who had loved to dance under the stars, twirling without a care. The realization struck her. Sharing these memories didn't just heal them individually. It created a tapestry of love that afforded each of them the space to grieve, while simultaneously celebrating their loved ones' legacies. "Molly, honey," Mrs. Thompson said gently, pulling her daughter close. "What do you remember about your dad?" There was a tender encouragement in her voice, an invitation to dive deeper into healing waters. Molly's eyes widened as she met the gaze of the others. "He used to sing to me at bedtime. He made up silly songs about everything." Laughter erupted weakly, like spring flowers blooming through winter's remnants. One by one, stories blossomed. Hushed voices stilled their fears, wrapping around each tale like warm blankets. Laughter mixed with gasps, love intertwined with loss. But just as Lily started to feel that sense of peace wash over them, the atmosphere shifted again, less a wave, more a hurricane. The stranger, a catalyst, had opened a door that felt perilously close to shutting. As stories spilled forth, shadows lengthened, whispers of doubt creeping in. Would they really be able to keep going? Would the doors that opened lead them to healing or further hurt? She clutched at Mark's hand, feeling the growing weight of uncertainty. But even with everything on the line, a sense of unity knitted them closer together. Who are we without our stories? Lily found herself asking, bravery bubbling within her. Can we end the cycle of anger? Can we forge something new together? And as murmurs of agreement surged and hearts began to loosen, a fresh wave of silence washed over them. David took a deep breath, shifting his gaze to the stranger still standing at the door. "Will you join us?" he asked, sorrowful yet hopeful. All eyes turned toward the stranger, who had suddenly become the key to the truth they all desperately needed. What would he reveal? What secret did he carry that could change everything? David's question hung in the air, an uninvited guest that demanded attention. The stranger shifted uneasily under their gaze. For a moment, it seemed as if he might retreat, the weight of their expectant eyes too heavy to bear. But then he stepped forward, his shoulders squared with determination. "My name is Ethan," he finally said, his voice low but steady. "And I'm here because my life is intertwined with the tragedy you've all carried." Lily's heart skipped a beat. What could this man have to do with their loss? An invisible thread of connection tugged at her, forcing her to listen with rapt attention. Ethan's gaze swept over each face, absorbing the pain and resilience etched in their features. "I lost someone too that day," he continued, his voice barely a whisper. "My twin brother, Noah. We were supposed to have a life full of laughter, just like you described your loved ones. Instead, his absence has been like a shadow that never leaves." A collective sigh rippled through the room, each person understanding the depth of his sorrow. The unspoken bond they all shared deepened with this revelation. "But I believe that's why I'm here," Ethan pressed on, his voice gaining strength. "To honor Noah, I've spent years volunteering with families touched by grief. It's part of why I was drawn to this gathering. I sense something special, something healing happening here tonight." Lily saw a glimmer of hope in his words, a spark that flickered across the room like a sudden dawn chasing away darkness. "You're right," she said, stepping forward. "It does feel special. But how do we keep it alive? It's easy to share stories, but harder to turn them into action." Ethan smiled, a faint but genuine smile. "That's the secret. We use our stories to create a foundation. A community that embraces what we've lost but also celebrates it. We can organize events, create a space for healing, and honor those we love. The room buzzed with energy. Ideas bounced from person to person, like fireflies igniting in the night. Molly suggested a dance party in their loved one's honor, while Mrs. Thompson chimed in about organizing a charity run dedicated to their memories, something that could be done annually. Mark turned to Lily, excitement shining in his eyes. What if we share their stories through art? Paintings, music, poetry? They shouldn't just be forgotten. We could create something beautiful. Legacy art, Ethan added enthusiastically, that encapsulates the essence of those who are gone. Imagine bringing together our talents to create something vibrant, something lasting. Lily felt her chest swell with hope and purpose. The atmosphere was shifting again, no longer burdened by unresolved sorrow, but filled with a collective desire to transform loss into something meaningful. They were more than their grief. They were a community knit together by shared experiences. David's gaze brightened. We can do this together. Let us promise right now to carry forward their light, to bring their joy into this world, even if they aren't with us physically. As they nodded in agreement, voices overlapping, a sense of urgency filled the room. They knew they had just taken the first step toward healing, but they needed to stay committed to this venture. Would they be brave enough to see it through? Before they could dive deeper into planning, Ethan hesitated. There is something crucial I still haven't shared, he said, his brow furrowing slightly. It's about my brother, and the circumstances surrounding his death. The air thickened with anticipation, uncertainty creeping back into the room. Every eye fixed on Ethan, breaths held, hearts pounding. What truth could he possibly reveal that would shake the very foundation of everything they had just begun to build together? And as the walls closed in, each soul aware that the night was about to take a turn they couldn't foresee, questions fluttered like frightened birds. What was this hidden truth? Would it bring them closer or tear them apart? Ethan hesitated, scanning the room filled with anxious faces. Grace felt a flutter of dread in her stomach. What could possibly disrupt the fragile healing they had just begun? The air shimmered with electricity, an imbalance pleading for resolution. My brother wasn't just a victim that day, he began, voice thick with emotion. He was also behind the wheel, and he was intoxicated. A gasp echoed through the crowd like a crack of thunder. All eyes darted between Ethan and Mrs. Thompson, whose expression shifted from shock to devastation. It felt like the floor beneath them had cracked open, revealing a chasm filled with raw fear and painful memories. "Wait!" Lily cried, her voice trembling. "This can't be. Did he? Was it really an accident?" Ethan shook his head. Yes and no. It wasn't planned, but the consequences were real and devastating. I've spent years wrestling with the guilt, the grief. How do I reconcile loving him and hating that he made that choice? His words came out shaking, revealing the turmoil behind his brave face. Grace felt tears prick at her eyes, realizing the complexity of it all. No one was merely a victim or a perpetrator. They were all trapped in this tangled web of loss and blame, looking for a way to find healing together. Mark stepped forward, his eyes glistening. And what do we say to the families who lost everything? How do we find a way to unite after this revelation? By understanding, Ethan replied, his voice steadying. We can't erase mistakes, but we can acknowledge them and learn to live in a world where they happened. We honor our loved ones by sharing our stories, including the hard parts. Grace took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words wash over her. They needed to carve out a space, not just for the laughter and love, but for the mistakes and pain. It took a moment, but the energy shifted again. It radiated hope, the kind that could heal rather than hurt. I lost my brother too, David murmured. He wasn't perfect either. His choices led him down dark paths, but I loved him nonetheless. Just because we feel pain doesn't mean we have to allow it to divide us. Gradually more voices chimed in. We can hold space for both the good and the bad," Grace interjected, her heart pounding in synchronicity with the room. "We'll create a legacy not through denial, but through truth. This community can become a sanctuary for healing, not simply for the losses, but for understanding the entire picture." Tension began to lift as the possibility of unity molded itself into their collective consciousness. It wasn't just about the past, it was about the way forward. They could share their grief, their love, their longing, with openness that promised more than division. "I'm in," Lily declared, feeling strength surge through her. "Let us create a place where everyone's story matters, where their memories and their mistakes can coexist." "Together," Grace echoed, feeling resolution strong within her. "For every heart that beats in Maple Grove, let us build a future an art festival, a remembrance run, a mural that tells our story, the real one. We'll honor their legacies as we rebuild together." Ethan smiled, brushing tears from his eyes. If this community can face the truth, it can become an example of courage for others. Together we can turn pain into growth. As they mapped out plans, excitement bubbled in their hearts. Hope was tangible now, filling the air with purpose, crafting stronger bonds among them. They began discussing ideas and possibilities, each voice confident, each share a step towards healing. But just as the atmosphere became buoyant, Grace felt a shift. She looked around at the faces, many still tinged with sorrow, but now determined. They were ready to move forward, but this wasn't just about Maple Grove. It was a lesson for every town or community wrestling with their own untold stories. Finally, Grace stood at the front of the room, heart racing. "If we can learn to share this truth, to embrace imperfection," she said, "we must also learn to connect it with action. We owe it to those we've lost. We owe it to ourselves. Let us become a beacon of hope together." The collective breath released, and lightness spread throughout the room. They were no longer just victims of their past. They were pioneers of their future. Together, they could be the change. They could craft new narratives etched with resilience and love. At that moment, Grace felt an overwhelming sense of unity. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to embrace it together, one heartbeat at a time. As the gathering wrapped up, excitement flickered like sparklers, igniting promises of creativity and connection. Coffee cups clanked, ideas flew about like confetti, and they ultimately left the space with a renewed sense of purpose, glimmers of hope sketching pathways for the future. And as Grace looked around, she felt a warmth grow in her heart. They were part of something monumental, part of the fabric of Maple Grove, stitched with truth, megawatts of love, and the promise of togetherness. That evening, as she tucked Marcus into bed, they painted together in colorful strokes an expression of dreams not just for her, but for her community. The days of struggle grew lighter, now a canvas of possibilities. As Grace kissed Marcus goodnight, she whispered, "We are all connected, baby. No matter how different we seem, our love ties us together." And for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of tomorrow lift, cradling hope like a cherished dream. Together, indeed, they could thrive. Now, before we say goodbye, it's vital that you subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss the exclusive stories that are coming next. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to help feed the algorithm, make our community thrive. And please, comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. We want to hear your voice. Lastly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand its power. Let us keep building this incredible journey together.